It's also my pleasure to remit to our piper a challenge coin that was minted especially for our 275th anniversary.
Mr. Art DiCecco, the Grand Master from the Grand Lodge of Canada. Deputy Grand Master, my apologies. Deputy Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Canada for the province of Ontario, and his lovely lady Natalie. Next we have Most Worshipful Troy LeBlanc, the Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Saskatchewan. Next we have Most Worshipful Frank. Sorry, Frank Gamble. I can't read my own writing, and I should know that. The Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia. Next we have Worshipful John Michel Blay, the Worshipful Master from St. Andrew's Lodge, and his lovely lady Marianne. Next we have Mr. Andrew Breeler, the immediate past Grand Master for the Lodge of Nova Scotia, and his lovely lady Sonia. Next we have Mr. Jamie Ireland, the immediate past Grand Master.
The Grand Master.
Oh. My information has been wrong, and he was a former Chief of Police. So the current Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Canada, Province of Ontario, and his lovely lady Kelly. Let's see if I can end on a good note. Laurie Bishop, the Grand Master for the Grand... So much for that one, folks. So the immediate past Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of New Brunswick, and his lovely lady Ruth.
One day off.
Yes. All right, everybody, you guys can have your seats. The Andrews is the oldest constituted Masonic Lodge in the British Commonwealth and overseas, which basically means we're old. A little history on that. So the United Grand Lodge of England, which was the first Grand Concordant body of the Masonry, they started in England in 1717. They go by the United Grand Lodge of England, or for short form for most of us, it's they're ugly. Absolutely. Next, St. John's Grand Lodge, which would later become the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts within Boston, they were stood up in 1733, which is where we got our writ, which allowed us to stand up our lodge in 1750, 1 year after the start-up of the town of Halifax. And of note, it was not until 1866 that the Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia stood up, which means we're older than they are. One thing you're going to hear a lot tonight, which is why Masonry has stood for so long, is the word brother, which is why I joined. Because being a member of the military, brotherhood, and willing to fight and stand next to the person, the man or woman who's beside you, is very important to me. So I thought I'd quickly read, it's a little paragraph on what brother means from a Masonic perspective. The term brother, which Freemasons apply to each other. Freemasons are brethren not only by common participation of the human nature, but as professing the same faith, as being jointly engaged in the same labors, and as being united into the marital covenant or tie, whence they are also emphatically called brethren of the mystic tie. And I believe that's very apparent in this lodge to have made its 275 years, and I see it every time we have an event, whether it's Robbie Burge or going out to play golf with the Learning Center charity events, or various other charitable organizations we do. Brotherhood is first and foremost of what we do, which is very important to why this institution has stood the test of time as long as it has. So to kick off the next piece, we'll have a toast to the craft. correction, toast to the king of the craft.
Please, rise, charge your glasses. To the king and to the craft.
Next, we will have the toast to the Grand Lodge.
He's away for a day.
Brothers, to our ancient fraternity and to the beautiful organization that we have here in Nova Scotia, to the craft.
To the craft.
Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia.
Represented by the Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia.
I apologize. Wait, one day screws it up.
And the response to the Grand Lodge will be given by Most Worshipful Brother Frank Young.
Please be seated.
Brethren, yes, after the Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia, I'm honored to be here as part of the 175th anniversary of St. Andrew's Lodge. For our past, immediate pastor and master, who remember St. John, we had 1 year too soon. But it is a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the brethren, our guests from out of our jurisdiction for attending, and congratulations.
And our last toast of the evening will be the toast to the visitors.
Visitors to St. Andrews or visitors to Nova Scotia?
Why do you say both?
I would say both. Visitation is an integral part of what we do. We meet with each other in our lodges. We fraternize, we get to know each other, we share each other's lives, but it gets so much richer when we visit each other. When we visit each other's lodges, when we visit each other's jurisdictions, we see how things are done, and it's just part of the beauty of what we do. Please stand.
Our visitors.
And the response to the toast to the visitors will be done by Mr. James.
Thank you so much, Right Worshipful Brother Savory, for that great toast to the visitors. On behalf of the visitors, both from within the Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia jurisdiction and the ones here from outside the jurisdiction, I thank you so much, brethren. The Worshipful Master and members of St. Andrew's Lodge No.1, we are very pleased to be here to support you on this 275th anniversary. Thank you so much for the hospitality. We're looking forward to a great banquet, and excellent. Thank you.
So before we start the dinner, which I'll outline how this is going to go, I'll leave you guys with a quick joke. I wouldn't know it well enough to do it. So a young entered apprentice was doing his Q&A, and he was doing his rights to pass on to a fellow craft degree, and he was doing the signs and symbols of what an entered apprentice does. And the tester said, "You did very good, young man, congratulations." The entered apprentice looks at him and he says, "You know, I understand all of the signs and symbols except one. Every time I look to the east, all the past masters were scratching their ear and whistling." And for a second, the tester kind of looks and he says, he starts to smile and he says, "Oh no, that's not a symbol. That's all of them changing or turning up their hearing aids." evening was a short history of St. Andrew's Lodge by the immediate past Grand Master, Most Worshipful Brother Andrew Beaver.
A brief history of St. Andrew's Lodge. Volume 1. I've been pretty busy the last couple of weeks here. I do need these actually, no? Okay. You're not master yet. It's certainly been a pleasure and an honor to address everyone here tonight. This being the occasion of St. Andrew's 275th anniversary, I want to really thank all of you for coming and celebrating this event with us. It's been a lot of time in preparations, and we've been working on it for 5 years, and we've totally redesigned it in the last 2 months to make it accommodate the way that we really feel that we wanted it to go, which is like celebrating with our family and friends together and all of our brothers. So it's certainly a pleasure to have everybody here tonight. And I want to especially thank the head table group that traveled such long distances to come and celebrate with us. And you heard them announced already, but I'll say them again from the Grand Lodge of Canada, Province of Ontario, Most Worshipful Brother Jamie Ireland and his wife Kelly, and the Grand Master, the Deputy Grand Master from the Grand Lodge of Canada, Province of Ontario, Right Worshipful Brother Architect and his wife Natalie, Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Saskatchewan, Troy LeBlanc, and the Grand Master of New Brunswick, immediate past Grand Master of New Brunswick, Most Worshipful Brother Lord Bishop and his wife Ruth. And of course, where would we be without having the presence of our current Grand Master for Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia, Most Worshipful Brother Frank Campbell. And I've been asked to give you a short address on the history of St. Andrew's Lodge. And, well, short? How do you give a short history on a lodge that's been around for 275 years? On a lodge that is basically synonymous with the term City of Halifax, Town of Halifax. You know, you can't look at the history of Halifax and not see also the history of St. Andrew's Lodge. They're intertwined into the entirety of the generations that have been around. And if you look at the history of St. Andrew's Lodge, you'll see that it's probably stated that we formed in 1750. We actually received our warrants on July 19th, 1750. This day, 275 years ago. So you're actually here celebrating on the day. But when you look at it, think about it at the time and the logistics of trying to get a warrant here in Halifax in 1750 with 3 months of sail time, transporting an application to England and then having England study it, review it, and approve it, and then send it back here to Nova Scotia. The actual history, when you read the history of St. Andrew's Lodge, done by R.B. Harris, 1750-1950 version, it speaks about that the workings were put into place in around the fall of 1749, which is right bang on with the formation of Halifax City. And it's not the first bit that we've had masonry in this province. As you look back at it, Erasmus James Phillips was made the provincial Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Nova Scotia in 1738, from a deputization from the then Grand Master of the Grand Master of Massachusetts, and approved later through the Grand Lodge of England. So the history there was a tight relationship between Massachusetts and Nova Scotia for many, many years. But at that time, they were called the First Lodge of Halifax. And the number that was associated to them was number 65 out of the Grand Lodge of England when it was formed in 1750, St. Andrew's Lodge. But we even have an even older date here in the province of Nova Scotia. Back in the 50s, 1950s, we discovered a stone that's called Annapolis stone, which was authenticated and reviewed and proven to be 1606, 1608, 1604. 1604, that had inscribed on it the date, the Masonic symbol, and the stonemason's mark on the stone. And it just goes to show how long the history of masonry has been in the province of Nova Scotia and related to St. Andrews. So the first lodge of Halifax, 1750 to 1757, the early years started with the formation of the lodge, and it was called the First Lodge. It didn't have a name. It wasn't called St. Andrew's Lodge. And shortly after that, their meeting place was the Pontac Inn. So the name became the First Lodge of Halifax, Pontac Inn. And most lodges were called by where they met at that time. They didn't have names anywhere in the world. They didn't really have names. They met in inns, and they were identified by those inns in their meeting nights. Rashford James Phillips being sent back to England, and the Honourable Edward Cornwallis, who was our first master of St. Andrew's Lodge, the First Lodge of Halifax, he went back in 1753. In around 1757, there was no provincial deputized member acting as the provincial Grand Master for Nova Scotia. At which point, the First Lodge of Halifax took over that duty. So they were the first, built up provincial Grand Lodge. Functioning was the First Lodge of Halifax. And selection of the members became that Grand Lodge, and the remaining members formed a lodge that was listed as number 4. And they ran with this number 4 number for many, many years. 1750 to, it wasn't until 17, I'm losing my numbers, 1786, when the name St. Andrews showed up on the rolls of one of the Massachusetts documentations. Let's see if I can read it to you. The records of St. John's Grand Lodge of Massachusetts have the following entry. There's no light over here. Under the date of December 24th, 1740, which was a mistake, 1750. This is where the formation of the lodge. Omitted in place that our Right Worshipful Grand Master, Mr. Price, the Grand Master of Massachusetts, granted a deputization to ye position at sundry brethren at Annapolis, Nova Scotia, to hold a lodge in the appointed Major Erasmus James Phillips, the District Grand Master. I need some light. Who has since, at ye response, the sundry brethren at Halifax granted a constitution to hold a lodge there and appointed Right Worshipful Brother His Excellency Edward Cornwallis, Esquire, their first master. So that was the section that identifies him there. But the piece that I was talking about was, it's a different piece. Anyway, I'll come back. So from 1750 to 1866, St. Andrew's Lodge had many rolls on their numbers for the different Grand Lodges of English Masonry here in the province. Number 65 was originally their number in application when they were chartered in 1750. Number 4 when they took over the Provincial Grand Lodge in 1757. Number 155 under the Ancients in 1767 out of England. If you don't know about that, there was a switch over between Ancients and Moderns, so they ran with the number 155 under the Ancients. And then number 188 under the Moderns in 1768, as there was war brewing, there was a different element of military units coming over to Nova Scotia from England who were running under a Moderns charter. So St. Andrews thought, well, maybe we better register under this Moderns charter. So they registered under this Moderns charter. And then again, number 137 under the Moderns charter in 1769. The name of St. Andrews, as I said earlier, was not adopted until 1786. And that was on the registry in England listed as number 155, St. Andrews, the first Tuesday. So An interesting note, though, is that the founding member in 1750, the Honorable William Nesbitt, was initiated. He wasn't a founding member, but he was initiated into the lodge in 1750, and he held a party after he was initiated. And then the following year, 1751, he held another party on New Year's Day. And we have continued that New Year's Day tradition of the St. Andrews New Year's Day levee in this city since 1750, 1751. So this will be coming up our 276th, 275th, or however you want to look at it. Continual celebration of that in one form or another. Of course, COVID caused us some changes and issues. I don't want this to be too long because I know we have the long evening, but some of the neat things about St. Andrews Lodge, as it was a provincial lodge and one of the lodges that was forming other lodges in the jurisdiction in and around the period from 1768 to 1784, St. George's Lodge was formed in His Majesty's Independent Companies at Charlottetown, St. John's Island, which is now called Prince Edward Island. Virgin Lodge No. 2 was formed on the provincial rolls in 1784. Thistle Lodge, 82nd Regiment of Foot, Solomon Lodge in Fredericton, New Brunswick, later No. 6 on the Grand Registry of New Brunswick. Hiram Lodge, St. John, New Brunswick, later is No. 17 on the provincial roll. St. Andrews Lodge has been involved in creating some of the initial lodges which spread forward to create the other lodges in the other jurisdictions in the Atlantic provinces. It's very amazing and interesting to see that. Military-wise, you'll see the remembrance corner here with the print from Alexander Keith's archives that was donated to us by the King family, and all the 3 plaques of the different World War I, World War II, Korean and Vietnamese War, where members of St. Andrews Lodge served and died. And a very interesting picture inside the lodge room. If you get a chance to go in there, you'll need a magnifying glass, but there's a picture in there that shows St. Andrews' installation in 1810. The furniture in the picture is the same furniture that's in the lodge room right now. So the lodge room furniture is the museum's quality of itself. And we only really figured that out here 6 months ago. We've been knocking that furniture around like it was whatever. So now I'm like, no, it's 225 years old, man, take care of that stuff. If you get an opportunity or a chance, the museum is next door. You get to walk through there and see some of the historical stuff. There's a lot of St. Andrews stuff connected to it because, well, we were the ones that were there in 1750. So, but there's a lot of other information that it's really interesting. If you haven't been to the museum, I guarantee you'll walk in there and go, oh wow, I didn't know that, that's pretty cool. But the history of St. Andrews, as I said, when we had the Halifax explosion here, the current master of the lodge was actually the minister at St. Paul's Church down at the Parade Square. And he brought in, turned the church into a morgue and a family identification center to help find the people that were either blinded by the flying glass or injured or killed by the explosion. And Larry Borden was Prime Minister, sent down financial aid and physical aid down to the city to help out. And he also was a member of St. Andrews Lodge, serving in Ottawa as the Prime Minister. So our history is ladled with people of interest and people of character who have done amazing work, not only in the lodge but also in the community. And our history is long and hopefully a lot longer. Our goal here, as I said at a meeting up in Ontario, we want to see where St. Andrews Lodge will be in 1,000 years. We want to make sure that left behind is a history and a legacy that we can pass on to our next generation and the next generation of Masons for St. Andrews Lodge. So thank you again for coming tonight. Thank you for celebrating with us. You know, if you get a chance to get a hold of one of these books, they're like gold. There's so much information in it. You'll love it. It has complete histories of everything. R.V. Harris is the one who wrote it. And I'll let anybody take a look at this, but I won't let it out of my hands very much. But this one's actually signed by R.V. Harris. Signed copy.
What if we co-started
What? It's unlocked. It's always unlocked. The museum's unlocked. You just gotta reach around and click the lever. The door is shut. It's just shut to confuse criminals. But again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great night tonight. I'm not going to put on too long. I know I took that thing in 45 minutes. So again, thank you.
Thank you, most merciful brother Beeler. Before we go on and carry on with the next little speech, 2 points. One, the 50-50 draws up to $475. Tickets stop going on sale at 8 o'clock or 2000 for the military people. As well, in the blue room, which is right next door, is a photo booth area. So after all the speeches are done, once we kick off with the entertainment, you guys can go in. Commemorate the event. Just make sure none of you are CEOs with your HR department here, because we aren't liable for any of your problems that might arose with your family problems. Next, we're going to have some speech and a toast from the worshipful master of St. Andrew's Lodge, worshipful brother John Sheldon.
Thank you very much. As indicated before, please do charge your glasses. So the bar is still open. Feel free to go there while I'm talking. I am going to put my, no, I don't want to take a chance there. It'll probably blow away. But I will have that, and we will have a toast shortly enough. First off, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sounds familiar, for being here with us tonight. It's an honor to have so many people here, and if I can be a bit informal, Andrew had introduced the head table. We do have some other people who are here that I would like just to mention. Our Deputy District Grand Master for District 1, Pete Lacroix, is here, and Peter, you'll see, you'll see he has a very unique, and I believe you may have a few extras. He's out, okay. A pin on there, and it's Be the Example. Just a wonderful idea that is, I think, timeless and priceless, and I thank you very, very much for that. I also want to recognize Dominic Nalesco here. Dominic and I, we've got this this bromance going on, and thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure he's like, what the heck? But no, thank you so much, Dominic, for coming in. It's really a pleasure to see you. So many other people, Keith Campbell. Yeah, you're looking down, and I can see you. Thank you so much. And we have so many other wonderful guests, and just too many to mention, because I'd be going on for 45 minutes. So I promise you I want to be a bit short. You will notice on your table this document, which is two-sided. It has not only on the front, and then the second page talks about what we're doing tonight, but also has a quote from the book that Andrew spoke about from R.V. Harris, The History of Freemasonry in Nova Scotia from 1786. And on the back, if you look, July 19th, 1750 to July 19th, 2025. 275 years. I was looking at the beautiful 275th. I feel like this is almost like Hollywood here. I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, the only thing we're going to be able to keep from that is the TH. For the 280th, apparently Andrew was telling me we're going to have a 280th, 285th, 290th, 295th, and then 300th. So we can keep at least the TH in there. Just over 275 years ago, in June of 1749, 2,500 men, women, and children arrived on 13 different ships. The head of that ship, of that flotilla, was the Sphinx. And carrying on the Sphinx was Edward Cornwallis, who Andrew mentioned. I'll talk about him shortly enough. 1750, a year later, 12 men banded together to start a lodge, not knowing what the name would be. And as indicated before, they met at the Pontac Inn. I'd like you to think of the challenges at the time that was occurring in 1750. We look at our own challenges, we fall into the trap of historical hubris, I'll call it, where we think, oh my goodness, things are tough, things are volatile, uncertain, complex, asymmetrical, otherwise known as VUCA, you may have heard. That comes from the US Army College. Think of at the time, the weather. People, for the most part, coming from England, came here. It was cold in the winters, hot in the summers. We're seeing it here. And you know what they had back then that we have today? They have storms. And quite a few of them at the times. And they didn't have the means to deal with them. Andrew had indicated the logistics at the time. And the politics too. Only 2,500 people. Edward Cornwallis had the role of creating a semblance of society here. There were threats that abounded. Threats from sickness. Threats from the French. Because don't forget, they were still at war with the French. The fortress of Louisbourg had yet to fall. That would happen 8 years after. On the plains of Abraham, outside of Quebec City, another citadel city, the battle had yet to be fought that would determine the history of Canada and, dare say, French North America. Our allies today, but at the time, were enemies, the Mi'kmaq, and the challenges that went on in trying to stave off constant attacks that did occur. Essentially, at the time, life was short, and life was brutish. Now, I do want to acknowledge the present controversy surrounding certain individuals of this period, as you well know. But we must avoid what is known as retrospective bigoteering, where people rush to judge the actions of yesterday through the lens of today's values. For me, it's a sign of virtue signaling and historical hubris to act in such a manner. What we need to do is recognize the wrongs of the past, while also recognizing the rights of the past. As I indicated before on the back of your program, you notice the names of the 12 original members of St. Andrew's Lodge. And I recognize that Andrew had indicated that Mr. Nesbitt wasn't. However, I have other information from RBRs that the petition for the Lodge of Freemasons situated in Halifax was signed by Governor Cornwallis and 4 others: William Steele, William Nesbitt, Robert Campbell, and David Haldane. All 4 came from that same flotilla of 13 ships that arrived in June of 1749. Steele was listed as a brewer, Nesbitt as a clerk, and Campbell and Haldane as military officers. Steele became one of the early members of the first Legislative Assembly here in Nova Scotia, and at one point was its speaker. They were and continue to be active members of the community and in Freemasonry. Allow me to tell you a bit about some of the others as well. Their leader, Edward Cornwallis, was, as you know, a British career military officer, a member of the aristocratic Cornwallis family, who reached the rank of Lieutenant General. After Cornwallis fought in Scotland, putting down the Jacobite Rebellion in 1745. And those of you who know the TV show Outlander, you know what I'm talking about. Look at my wife, she does. And by the way, there is a Freemason here in Nova Scotia, I'm sure many of you know him. His name is James Fraser. And believe it or not, he gets asked that all the time, and he does not go by the name of Jamie. So I'll close that Outlander reference for those who know him. Okay. Cornwallis was appointed groom of the chamber for King George II, a position he held for the following 17 years before arriving here in Nova Scotia. And then he arrived in Nova Scotia in June of 1749 and stayed here until 1752. And he was assigned with the role of building this colony, and specifically building what was known as the town of Halifax at the time. He then returned to London married, in fact, he married the niece of the first Prime Minister of Great Britain, Robert Walpole. He was then transferred to Gibraltar, where he became the governor of that colony. Governor Cornwallis, as we'll call him, was interested in our craft before, during, and after his tenure here in Nova Scotia. Because before he arrived here, he had founded a lodge in Ireland. He founded our lodge here. And then in Gibraltar, he founded another lodge up there. One of the other signatories, William Nesbitt, arrived with Cornwallis in 1749 as his clerk. He ended up serving as a clerk of the General Court and was confirmed as a notary public in April 1752. In 1753, he became Judge Advocate of the Vice Admiralty Court and Attorney General. Then in 1758, he was elected to the first House of Assembly. And the next year, he was appointed its second Speaker. In 1760, he was commissioned of Justice of the Peace. In 1763, he was appointed Surrogate General of the Probate Court. The next individual on this list was Charles Lawrence. Charles Lawrence was a Brigadier General. He was a British Army officer who, as Lieutenant Governor and subsequently Governor of Nova Scotia, is perhaps best known for overseeing, and this is dear to my family, the expulsion of the Acadians from Nova Scotia, as well as the settling of the New England planters in this province. He died in Halifax and is buried right now in the crypt of St. Paul's Cathedral. Lawrence was seen as a competent and efficient officer, perhaps a bit too efficient, with a service record that earned him fairly rapid promotion. And he was well appreciated by Cornwallis, to the point where Lawrencetown is named after him. Horatio Lloyd Gates was a British-born, and this is an interesting thing, American Army officer who served as a general in the Continental Army during the early years of the Revolutionary War. He took credit for the American victory in the Battle of Saratoga in 1777, a matter of contemporary and historical controversy, and he was even blamed for the defeat at the Battle of Camden in 1780. Gates has been described as one of the Revolutionary's most controversial military figures. And when you think about Benedict Arnold, you kind of wonder, how could that be? Well, it was because of his role in what was known as the Conway Cavalry. And Wayne, are you familiar with that? No, I'm going to hope that you were. Which attempted to discredit and even replace General George Washington, who himself was a Mason. The battle at Saratoga, his actions during and after the defeat at Camden, all resulted in him being disgraced. After the end of the Austrian Succession Wars, which was in 1748, before he even arrived here, Gates traveled to Halifax and became an aide to Edward Cornwallis. Rear Admiral Alexander Colville, the 7th Lord Colville of Couros, served as the Commodore and Commander-in-Chief of His Majesty's ships and vessels in America from 1757 to 1762, including the Siege of Louisbourg, or Louisburg. Colville became an entered apprentice here in our lodge. And then he went to Boston, where he became a fellow craft and was raised being a master mason. Colville contributed to British success in the North American seas and battles with the 7 Years' War, which was really the first World War that occurred. He was a prolific writer of detailed letters to military leaders, his family, the king, and many others. And his letters can be found on this side of the Atlantic as well as in Great Britain. As Andrew had indicated, one of our brothers who was initiated in 1881 was Sir Robert Borden, the 8th Prime Minister of the Dominion of Canada. The Lodge has also on its number a very long roll of 10, now I believe 11, Grand Masters from the province, from of our lodge. Several provincial governors, premiers, members of the legislature and Parliament of Canada, bishops and leaders of the church, commission officers of the Canadian Army, the Royal Canadian Navy, at least one police chief to my knowledge, and other distinguished individuals in business and in the arts. Suffice to say that St. Andrew's, Lodge No. 1, has had its fair share of community leaders who, through their efforts in our community and in our lodge, have allowed us to be here tonight to celebrate this evening. I'd also like to acknowledge those worshipful masters during my time as a Master Mason who have preceded me and who are in attendance here this evening. In particular, brothers Scott Berg, Alexandre Avanchet, which I do not believe he's here, Chris Crease, and Ariel Broas. In particular, I want to acknowledge the leadership of those who kept us together during the darkest hours of the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, then Worshipful Master Chris Crease, as well as brothers Berg, Broas, and our immediate past Grand Master, and the individual responsible for getting me into Freemasonry, Andrew Beer. I'd also be remiss if I didn't recognize those who are unable to make it here with us this evening, either because of health issues or personal commitments. I wish to acknowledge their outstanding contributions to our lodge and wish our absent brothers a happy anniversary wherever they may be. This evening is one of gratitude for all that these men and the women in their lives who have supported them so much over the years have given to us. We thank all those who have come before us with the hope that those of us who are here now and those who will follow will be inspired by their contributions, their leadership, and their commitment to Freemasonry and to our lodge. Consequently, I ask that you charge your glasses, that you rise, and join me in a toast to the Brethren of St. Andrew's, Lodge No. 1, to those past, to those present, to those absent, and to those who have yet to join, to the Brethren. Merci beaucoup.